Yeah, but I have been working out, and I know Scusa doesn't believe me. He's giving me this look like, you little creep. Like, she's giving me this, what are you doing?
They always take a second. They're like, what are you talking about?
I don't know. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Be completely honest. Am I a bad-looking person?
I'm not going to answer it.
Everybody laughs.
Am I a bad-looking person?
Sully,
no, you're not bad.
Prove it, sure, but the wide shot there. I mean, that's just beauty. Jay Ward.
See, you should get the blue.
Yeah, the blue.
Oh, you can see it on the wide shot.
I can see
No, you can see it on the wide shot.
Everyone knows what I love.
People are like, you look Cuban. I'm not Cuban. Yeah, I'm not.
Who says you look Cuban?
Like little 9th graders on the bus.
It's all right. You don't look Cuban.
I'm not Cuban, baby. Italiano y Irish, man. And I do speak Spanish.
Me too.
Fluent British.
Spanish too.
Almost.
Nice.
Do you speak Spanish?
Kind of.
You speak
in the class.
Spanish?
Sorta. Not really.
Sorta.
We took it for 6 years,
More
Como
than.
Shannon.
Yeah.
¿Te gusta el Sully Show?
A lot. I know what you said, but I'm just going to answer you in English. I like the Sully Show a lot.
Me gusta el Sully Show mucho. That's be the right answer. So we're having a conversation in Spanish.
I understood everything you
To
guys
flatter all the Spanish and Mexican residents of Belleville Park. So, yeah.
Hola.
Oh,
They all just died at that.
Before I leave the studio, I think it's great.
That's great.
Jaclynn and Shannon, thank you very much for coming on. You
Anytime.
By the Belleville Park, and thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
So that was a good interview. All right, we'll be back after this with the Sully Show exclusive author Katelyn Rushe. This is a Sully Show exclusive. I'm here with author Katelyn Rushe. Thanks for joining me today, Katelyn.
Thanks for having me.
Great book, let me tell you. Usually it takes me, Deer Lake was her first novel, she's here to promote it. And it usually takes me about 3 to 4 months to read a book whenever I get a book, no matter what length the book is. I read this book in 1 month. Terrific book, Deer Lake by Katelyn Rushe. Go to lulu.com or amazon.com to buy Deer Lake. I'm just trying to get people to know. It's $20.50 on lulu.com. You can download it for $3.95. You go to amazon.com, new for $20.50, and used to new starting at $19.62. So, I'm sure everybody out there in BP land is wondering, how did your love of writing come about? We're going to start in the early days and kind of move toward Deer Lake because obviously you had to start somewhere. So we're going to start with the early days of Katelyn Rushe.
Okay, well, where did I get the inspiration to write? It's not really a overnight thing. It was kind of just years of having to read books, you know, in school and all that, always analyzing them. And I don't know, it's just one day you get an idea of your own story and you figure, I like it better than the stuff they're making us read, so why not write it down? And that's pretty much where it came from.
So who inspired you? Who inspired you to write?
I would say K.A. Applegate. For those of you who don't know who that is, she wrote the Animorphs series, pretty popular back in our days of grade school. And I think it's about a 64-book series, so I was a die-hard fan. I have all of them.
Holy camole.
Yeah, and I guess that was kind of where I got the style of writing, just having her style kind of branded in my mind so much. And I don't know if I still write that way, but that was where I got my basic idea.
And in the book I noticed you don't expect a dude like me to read a lot of books. But I read a lot, and I read Deer Lake in about a month. Terrific book, and I give it 5 Sully stars, which you probably don't really care about Sully stars. I haven't used them in so long on the show, but it is a terrific book. I couldn't stop reading. I was up till midnight half the time reading it. Yeah, but it's a long book. You can't read it all in one night, obviously. But it's a horror thriller, I would say. But I want you to explain to my audience what the plot is, like for Deer Lake. The plot.
Okay, well, the story starts out a prologue. You know, the classical horror setup. It's 2 people, hunters. They're running around in the woods. Something's chasing after them. You don't really find out what it is, but it gets them. And then it cuts to the first chapter, which is 20 years later in the present time, where we have our 3 main characters, Marcus, his sister Cassie, and his best friend Cody. They're going on a hunting trip to the same area that these 2 guys disappeared, which is in Canada. And as they get there, they're starting to notice these strange kind of incidents happening. They're related to deer. There's a couple incidents where, you know, people crash their cars because deer just for some reason were standing in the roadway and not moving. And just other incidents of houses or windows getting smashed by deer. And it all seems, you know, you hear about these things on the news all the time, deer just doing these little things. But then they meet one of the local people. Her name is Sarah Johnson, and she's of Native American descent. And her grandfather lives with her, is still very traditional. And he says that there's a kind of supernatural element behind this, a spirit who, for some reason, perhaps it was displeased and it's making the deer do this, but of course his granddaughter thinks that's ridiculous. And Marcus thinks it's ridiculous too, but Cassie and Cody, that sticks with them a little bit for some reason. And then eventually Marcus does get a deer. He catches this deer that he went up to Canada to hunt, and that's when they start to be a little more suspicious, these incidents. There's a whole scene here actually where they're in the campsite and a moose comes along.
Very well done, by the way, Katelyn.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but that's basically how it gets to the action from that point.
Oh, there's a lot of action, folks. I want you to check this out. It's basically from that point on, like you said, it's just non-stop action. And you really can't stop reading because you don't know what's going to happen next. There's police involved, and there's other kids involved. Like you said, there's Native Americans involved, and they feel like they're invading their territory, so to speak. These teenagers coming up there. That's the impression I got, at least.
Yeah, it's sort of got a lot of metaphors, double meanings and stuff.
Like I have like kind of a morbid fetish for violence.
Oh, what teenager
So,
doesn't?
Yeah, you know, there you go. But this book, I'm not sure, how many pages is this book? It's around, I'd say, 400 to 500 pages. It's a pretty lengthy book. How long is it?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. It says, if you look it up, like 416 pages, but, I mean, you know how books are set up. There'll be like blank pages in the beginning, and then just, they count those too for some reason.
Well, then right there, how long did it take you to write Deer Lake?
It took me 5 years. I got the idea when I was 12 years old. And I wasn't really serious with it at the time. It's just, I felt like writing a story. I had no idea it was going to end up that long. And for a while, I just kind of stopped writing it. I got bored with it. And then about 2 years ago, it kind of came back to me. It's like, oh my gosh, I have this idea, and I could actually do something with it. So, okay, I finished writing the book then.
That's very nice, and hard work goes into this, and it paid off, definitely. Definitely with this book. But a question I wanted to ask was, why deer, not some other animal or like a serial killer? Why deer?
Well, that's kind of the funny part of this. I said I was a bookworm who had like no life outside of reading books. I got the idea from a video game. I don't remember what the name of the game was because it wasn't mine. And it was deer hunting. And they had a part at the beginning of the video game where you could pick which character you wanted to be, all the different hunters, I guess. And if you go to the very end of this list of players you could be, the last option on the list was to be a deer. And I never picked that, but I was told that you pretty much run away from the hunters the whole time. And I didn't really have much of a story